I was constantly addicted to stimulation, to being busy, because it gave me a sense of self. I felt important. I felt like life was moving and happening, and it gave me energy, the energy that I thought that I needed to continue to function. I was afraid that if I stopped, that maybe I would get depressed. And I know some of that comes from my childhood. A lot of it does. My mom suffered with depression a lot of her life. So I developed these neurotic habits to constantly work and work, and it left me very burnt out. And for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I've been on this journey of learning to slow down. And it started by God actually asking me a question. He said, Maryl, what is the hurry? So guess what? I bought a bunch of books on it. And I found that what I was doing was bringing the same type of crazy into those dynamics. And I'm going to share with you the things that actually worked for me. Maybe they'll work for you. Maybe they'll resonate with you. If you've been on a journey to stop being so over anxious and to calm your nervous system, I would love to know down below to hear just more of your journey. I'm one of those people who lives in the future, and so I'm constantly thinking about what's next, being productive and moving life forward. But some of the things that have been driving me were from the pain of my childhood, that I am not enough and that I have to do more and be more and have more to feel okay about myself, to actually then finally be able to earn the right to be present versus just being present and then enjoying whatever God has for me in the moment. My nervous system was something that I knew nothing about, and we're not given a manual when we come into this world. We're learning as we go. It's all trial and error. And when I really started to see how chaotic my life had become because I was working multiple jobs or trying to start a side hustle or part of this ministry or that thing or take that class or read that book. If you've seen my bookshelves in any of my other videos, you know that I'm a book hoarder. I love them and I love learning. But sometimes I love learning so much that I'll just buy a book and I won't have the capacity to take it in. So my nervous system is overworking and trying to compensate for the lack of real peace that I have in my life. And my biggest change, which happened 2 months ago, was when I actually quit my full-time job in ministry, which I'll link that video up here if you're interested in hearing my process in growing in faith to why I decided to quit my job and to pursue using spiritual formation and doing spiritual direction for the world at large. But I made that big change because I was able to regulate my nervous system through essentially like 5 to 6 habits or things that I ended up choosing to do that actually worked. I'm not a therapist. Take what you will from this and see if it works for you. These are the things that helped me slow down and become more present and to see the goodness of God everywhere. It's not just quick tips or self-help tips, but they've actually helped to regulate my nervous system. God created our bodies to run a certain way. And there are things in our life that are at war with that. It's important to pay attention to actually go flow through them. It's like flowing downstream versus upstream and constantly feeling like you're in a battle. The first thing that I did, which is so simple but powerful, letting go of social media, about turning it off, about setting boundaries. So the constant stimulation and the images of ideal lives are so crazy making. They were for me. It was fueling this, I'm not good enough, I have to do more, I have to be thinner, I have to be wiser, I have to be more further along, I have to have what they have. And while we know that comparison is the thief of joy, I really saw how the information I was taking in, even from books, even from the constant learning, that overstimulation was keeping me and my nervous system just on hypervigilance and hyper arousal. And I was constantly needing more, and it was giving me dopamine or serotonin, the happy chemical that comes from your brain when you're either getting liking something, pressing a button, or by constantly getting a new information. It feels like we're learning, but we're not. What it did is made me more tired. It made me just more agitated, and it took my joy away. So I actually got this app. They're not sponsoring this video or anything, but this app called Refocus, and it basically turns my apps off when I set it. So it turns my social media off at 7 p.m. Then it won't let me access it until 10 a.m. I have found that has been so helpful by boundarying my mind and my heart. I cannot constantly interact and react and feel all the things that are coming into my world or my body. And so setting boundaries on that and saying no to all the external stimulation has so helped me be present to what God is doing in the moment, to the conversation I have, and even to let myself feel a little bored. It's okay to feel bored. Boredom actually just means that we're not feeling. It means that our mind is overworked and it's saying, hey, stop. You need something else in your life, or you need to get back into your heart. And so getting off social media has allowed me to focus on my life so that I could make some changes that I needed to. But because I was constantly being taken out of my body, my mind was constantly stimulated, I couldn't do that. So social media, limiting it, having a fast from it. The second one that I think is overlooked is we think, okay, if I just do external things, like maybe I'll incorporate a Sabbath, or I'll go on 48-hour retreats, or I'll make sure and get enough sleep. Those things are really good to heal our nervous system. We should not overlook them. But what I did is I actually looked at my relationship with productivity. I looked at the underneath side, which took some work in therapy. It took some honest reflection. It really took me examining my heart and saying, what about productivity makes me feel so alive? What about doing the next thing gives me a sense of thrill? What are the benefits and what are the drawbacks? And so I actually wrote a list, because the reason why we're wanting to be productive or do a lot or be overstimulated is because it's meeting a need. It might not be a healthy resource for it. When I realized that I was in a lot of pain and I felt like I wasn't good enough, I got to actually sit with that feeling with God. Why are so many people interested in just be more disciplined videos, or they feel so much shame about laziness, or that non-activity is somehow lazy, when actually I found that it's so much more productive, that I can get more done in 6 days than I can in 7, that the more sleep I get, the more focused work and the better work that I do when I do engage in work. And I'm so much more present to my relationships. And so looking at my relationship with productivity and realizing this taskmaster, this inner pharaoh that I had, was just harping on me constantly to go. So when I sat with that feeling, and I'm able to, when it comes up again, when I find myself, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed or exhausted, and I pause and I go, where throughout the day did I compromise on my new value system? So the productivity value system, my relationship with it has changed. I examined it with the Lord, with some close friends, and with myself, and really looked at what false narratives were driving it, what memories were driving it. And that was probably the biggest thing that changed it. Because when my core, my inside was just, it's sticky. If our heart's like sticky for that, because it gives us a hit, we can relearn to have productivity mean something different. It might mean slowing down. Productivity might mean slow work versus fast, intense work. I was trying to get things done as fast as I could so that I could what? And I had to look at, what was I trying to do? That really helped to regulate my nervous system, because I just stopped listening to the lie that I had to do more to be more. When I already felt like I was enough with God, even though, yes, I lack and I have weaknesses and I'm in the process of growing, but when it became enough for me to be with God in the moment of where I am, I didn't have to rush out or to burn myself out by doing more things. Third thing is I started being around people who were slower and who had their nervous systems regulated. And you can tell by how peaceful they are or how relaxed they are. They can still be energetic and charismatic, but they're relaxed. They're not in a rush. They're not like constantly scurrying. When I worked at the church, felt like I was constantly in this crisis mode, because the leader at the time was just driven by last minute things. He wasn't a planner. And so that just was his personality, but I wasn't thriving in that environment. I would feel stressed. I would go home and want to drink. And like, why do I want to drink? I want to be able to enjoy a glass of wine, not feel like I need it to come down from the anxiety and the stress of what's happening at work. So the people around me, I had to look at and go, how was I picking up their energy? How were their nervous systems affecting mine? And there's been a study done about not being around a non-anxious presence, that when we're around somebody that doesn't have anxiety, our own anxiety can regulate, our anxiety can lower. When I was in relationships with people who their energy was feeding me and I could be around them and I felt like there was more when we were together. There's more love, there's more joy, there's connection, and there's life. So being around people that were really life-giving, and really looking at some of my friendships that were maybe just not as vulnerable or honest or not as alive and engaging, and had to look at, am I choosing friends and choosing relationships that are draining to me? That doesn't mean we're not in relationships with people that God wants us to serve with, or that it has to always be like good or feel good. No. It just means I have to look at who am I surrounding myself with and what are their nervous systems doing, because we live in connection with one another. We don't live isolated. Now, I love solitude and I love having alone time and spending time with myself and God, but being with people gives us fuel. Even for those introverts of the world, we need others and we need to have that relational space with others. The fourth one, which I think is something that's so fundamental, is actually eating food that is really healthy. And I think we overlook this and we think, oh, that's just for the health gurus or those psycho people who like study or dietitians or go to the gym all the time. No, but our food really nourishes our body. From Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like food, shelter, security, those things are the base of what regulates our nervous systems, having a safe space. And when you're putting food into your body that isn't inflammatory, I got rid of things like seed oils, highly processed food, and I stopped restricting my eating, and I actually started eating to fuel myself and feeling like it's okay to eat carbs and eat fruit. Like I was impacted by the diet culture as well. Like you need to eat certain things or, have a cheat day. And I got rid of all those things and just said, what does it mean to actually make me feel good? So I would do things like Whole30. I would do these things like, oh, it's not sustainable, everything in moderation. And you hear all this like jargon of what you need to do. And I really looked at my value system when it came to what I was eating and how I was fueling my body. My body is the temple of God. And so living a life that is honoring my body and having it be something that is life-giving versus diminishing or something I have to hate, like hating my body, that really helps me regulate my nervous system. I didn't feel so constantly stressed about what I was eating and getting enough sleep or making sure I hit the gym. It's just like, if I was feeling super exhausted today, I didn't go to the gym. I didn't beat myself up about it. And I was so much more kind to myself. So eating the right food and taking care of my body has really helped, because those are just simple things like getting out and taking a walk. There's some study that I think Mark Manson brought up in one of his videos, but he said that 50% of depression would be cured by just taking a walk for 30 minutes in the middle of the day. Just like getting out of the fluorescent lights, being in an environment where there's nature and there's like life and vitality is so calming to your body and to my body. The last thing that I will say is saying no has been a huge thing that's regulated my nervous system, because not only has it been no to social media, no to the productivity hype, no to diet culture, no to draining relationships, but saying just no to things on the calendar that were just extra fluff and clutter. Saying no to even what I bought at the store, being like, I don't need that. Or maybe I do want that because that'll bring me some joy. But I was asking, like, is this going to bring me more joy in my life? Is this going to bring me more peace? Or is this going to be one more thing to take care of, or one more thing that is going to take me from what God is calling me to in my life? And when I was able to say no to even good requests, like, for example, at my church, I go to a really small church, and so there's a lot of positions that need to be filled, and saying no, even though I'm like, I feel bad, but because I know that if I do so many things throughout the week, I'm gonna get more burnt out, my marriage will suffer, I will be more resentful, I won't be able to make the content on YouTube that I really feel called to make at this season of my life. So saying no to things allows me to say yes to God, and say yes to peace, and say yes to presence. I make it a point to go on a walk during the middle of the day so I can just get out of my head, don't take my phone with me, and I'm just present. And every time I look around, I look at the houses, and sometimes I pray, sometimes I don't, sometimes I just ponder, but I'll look at the houses and I wonder, Lord, what's going on in that house? I'm just available. Maybe there's like a rose bush that I want to look at. But if I cram my day full of stuff and I say yes to a lot of events, then I might miss those opportunities to keep the pace and the rhythms that have allowed me to then be productive when it's time to be productive, present to those people that are around me, and to be able to make good choices in my life that are healthy, that are leading me more to be who God has called me to be. I'm curious for you, what has helped you be more present, and how has God maybe invited you to slow down in this season? The piece that we can examine, is there a part of it that I'm contributing to? Yes, there's life circumstances, but is there a part of me that's maybe rehashing some of my past story that God's inviting me to let go of and to allow Him to take control? Or are these actually things that I can learn to live in the moment with God and see life as more of a divine appointment versus something I have to accomplish, or this anxiety of I have to be in God's will, or I have to do this? That have to is coming from a shame place inside of us. And dealing with my shame in all those areas, my relationships, my productivity, social media not being good enough, but actually saying, no, I'm loved. Now I can live with God in the moment, even if that means doing hard things, even if that means doing things I don't want to do because of a greater purpose or because I'm becoming a loving person, and that means sacrifice. That means giving up my wants and needs sometimes, but not doing the things to dysregulate my nervous system just because, or because of this subconscious, unconscious, whatever drive that I have to compete, to be better. When I'm living in a place of enoughness, there's plenty, and I'm able to see more of God's kingdom. So you hear those sirens coming because living in a city. But check out this video next on how actually God taught me how to trust Him when I left my full-time job at the church, and I'll see you in the next video.